Hi, so we continue from where we left off. We've been reading The River Between, and we're going to continue from chapter 10. So, just a recap. From chapter 1 through 10, we discovered there's a river that goes between Makuyu and Kameno. And we also discovered that these two villages, the major difference in these two villages was their cultural beliefs and traditional beliefs. Kameno was conservative with tradition. It followed all the traditional rites and rituals and initiations, whilst Makuyu, on the other hand, was more liberal. Most people in Makuyu were changing to being Christians, and very few of those were still traditional. So from chapter 10 through the last chapter of the book, we see that there is another conflict that arises. So, chapter 11. Chapter 10, just a recap. Wayaki and Mutoni meet at the dance, right? They meet at the dance, they dance. This is the initiation dance, the dance that they needed to do. The celebration, this dance was during a celebration that they were doing before they actually go for the circumcision. So after that dance is done, the following morning, it was the day of circumcision. So the boys and girls were taken to the Honya very early in the morning. And the water in the Honya was so cold. The reason for this was, since the water was very cold, it was numbing the reproductive areas to make it less painful for the candidates during the circumcision process. So we are told Wayaki is in the water and he can't feel his reproductive organs. He can't feel his penis. The balls have shrunk. So Wayaki is on the boys' side. There's a division in groups. The boys are on one side and the girls are on the other side. So Wayaki is in the water, and the surgeon, the one who was responsible for conducting the circumcision, comes and cuts Wayaki's foreskin off. And for a moment, he could not feel the pain because everything down there was so cold and so numb, so he was not able to feel the pain. But you know how the body is. When his brain processed what had happened and time passed, the pain slowly started creeping in, and he looked down and he found the surgeon had just wrapped a white cloth around it. So blood was dripping to the ground, and that symbol of blood dripping to the ground showed that Wayaki was finally one with the soil. So when that happened, people were singing songs of praises. They were praising the brave boys for having gone through circumcision. Most of the women were dancing, drums were playing, food was being given to the boys and all that. So we're told the boys had to stay both the boys and girls had to be secluded from everyone else for a period of 7 days. And during this 7 days period, elders or can I say pungus, like in Zambia we can say counselors, right? So there are some elders who are selected to help teach the boys the way of the land. So as the boys were healing, they were also being taught several things about being an adult and the responsibilities that were expected of the boys after circumcision. And some of these elders were even having sexual intercourse in the presence of the boys. And obviously you can imagine these boys are in pain and they're just from being circumcised. And once you get circumcised, you're not supposed to get a hard on because that messes up the entire healing process. So some of the elders or some of the men that were in charge of teaching these boys how to be men were conducting in sexual intercourse right in the presence of these boys. And that had thrown Wayaki off a bit. It took time. He was in so much pain at the beginning that he never used to pay attention to whatever was going on. And when he finally started healing, like when the pain started reducing, he started paying attention to the stories that were being told. As you are well aware, in olden times, lessons were being taught through stories. So these elders would tell different stories, and then they would link those stories with different lessons, and they would explain certain lessons using stories. It was easier for the circumcision candidates to understand because of their age group. So that was what was happening. When Wayaki started healing a bit, he started paying attention to what was being taught, and he actually learned one or two things. So on the other side of the river, we find Mutoni and other girls. So Mutoni went through with a circumcision, but she was not healing as quickly as the other girls were healing. So after the 7 days had elapsed, she was still bleeding heavily, and life started leaving her body bit by bit. The only thing that was showing that she's got life was her eyes, rather. She was not healing as quickly. She was still bleeding. It's like her wound had become so infected. So when Wayaki left the initiation camp, he went back to Kameno, and he asked after Mutoni. Then he was told, no, Mutoni is at the auntie's place, but she's not healing well. So because him and Mutoni had some sort of connection, he decided to go and visit Mutoni. And when he arrived, he saw that she was not in a good condition at all. It seemed like the herbs that were being given to her are not working. But no one, I don't know whether it's neglection, or maybe it's because that's the method that everyone used to use, that every woman was subjected to. No one really thought about seeking medical help. They all depended on the herbs that were given to them by their surgeons, the village surgeons. So Mutoni's condition kept getting worse, and Wayaki remembered that Mutoni has a sister who would definitely wish for her sister to get healed fast. So he thought of Nyambura, and he remembered Nyambura always used to go and fetch water from the Honya every morning. So he went to go and look for Nyambura. He told Mutoni, saying, I feel like the situation is getting worse. Maybe let us inform your people that you're not getting better. We inform your sister, maybe we inform your parents also. But Mutoni did not want, because of the way that she left home. Remember the way she left home? So Mutoni didn't want her family to know the condition that she was in. But Wayaki was scared for her. He was scared for the things that might happen to her if the parents don't know what's going on. So he went to the Honya early in the morning, waited for Nyambura, but Nyambura didn't show up. The following day, he went back to the Honya, and luckily, Nyambura came through. And he explained the situation, like, your sister this side went through the circumcision, but she's not healing. So Nyambura immediately left her calabash pot and went to her auntie's place, where she found Mutoni was seriously ill. And she was looking like she had limited time on earth. So immediately Nyambura saw that, she started crying, and so Nyambura kept asking Mutoni, like, why did you have to go through this circumcision? So Mutoni kept responding with, no, don't worry, I am now a woman, I am now a full woman. So, and Mutoni begged Nyambura, like, don't tell Mom and Dad what has happened to me. Don't tell them. Just keep it to yourself. But then this became a huge burden on Nyambura. So when she went back home, she decided to go and tell their mother, Miriam. She explained the situation to the mother. But back in Kameno, Wayaki approached Mutoni's auntie. And he told the auntie, saying, no, I feel like Mutoni's condition is not getting better. Tony's condition is not getting better. I feel like we should take her to Syriana. We should take her to Syriana so she can go and see a doctor there. I'm sure they might give her antibiotics that will help with the situation that she's in. So just a backstory on Tony's auntie. Tony's auntie became a widow at a very young age, and she didn't have any kids. So her house was a refuge for many children and teenagers and everything. So she liked kids, but she didn't have any children of her own. So when Wayaki suggested that they take Tony to Syriana, she was okay with the idea. In fact, she looked like it seemed like she just wanted Tony to get better. So the suggestion of taking her to the hospital was received with open arms. It was received with open arms. It was received with open arms. But her only concern was how they were going to get Tony to Syriana. So Wayaki talks to a few boys in the community, and they carried her on a stretcher. They found a way of carrying her, and they took her to Syriana. But just when they arrived, Tony was talking through the way. And then the last thing she said was, I am glad that I am finally a full woman. And that's how she died. She just closed her eyes and died. The life left her body. So after Nyambura's death, news quickly spreads within the community. News quickly spreads that Mutoni is dead. Meanwhile, Joshua is told that his child is dead, and he has no reaction, because to him, he lost his daughter immediately he decided to go through with the circumcision. So he does not react in any way. And then we are also shown, we are taken to Chenge and the other elders. So the other elders are discussing. In fact, this discussion happens even before Mutoni dies. A discussion goes on between Chenge and other elders, and they start reviewing the condition of the different initiation candidates, and Mutoni's name is brought up. So one of the elders says, Mutoni's condition doesn't look so great. I feel like she won't make it. Then Chenge has nothing to say per se. He sighs and he passes a comment he says something. Okay, he doesn't say much about the entire situation, and other elders start saying maybe she's not healing because of her father, because the father changed from the father is no longer traditional. He's now in line with the missionaries. He's now a Christian. Maybe that's the reason as to why his daughter is not healing. Maybe this is a punishment from Murungu. And anyway, so after Mutoni dies, news reaches the communities, and this news is received differently. The people in Kameno are blaming the father, Mutoni's father's Christian values, as the reason as to why she's died, while as the people in Makuyu are blaming the traditional side of the community as the one that has killed her, because female circumcision is barbaric. So amidst this confusion, we are introduced to one of the missionaries, Livingstone. His name is Livingstone. So Mr. Livingstone has been a missionary in the Kuyu community for over 25 years. And at this point, he's old, so old that when he walks, his bones tremble. And he always wears a hat, and he's got a bald head, and he's got freckles all over his face. So I introduced to Livingstone, who has not been able to penetrate. He understands the language of the tribe, but he's not been able to penetrate through their traditional practices. He's tried to adjust or try to learn the ways of the people. Anyway, his theory is he didn't want to be like the previous missionaries that came to abolish every traditional belief. His own aim was to show the people of the Gikuyu community how certain practices were barbaric, and he wanted to seem like he was part of the community, if that makes sense. So because he wanted to seem like he was okay with everything else that was happening, he attended a few celebrations that were happening, and his conclusion from the few celebrations that he attended was the people of Kameno were very immoral. Their traditional dances were so seductive. Their practices were kind of immoral and barbaric. So after Mtoni's death, news reaches Livingstone, and Livingstone is the mission leader in Sirena. Yeah, he's the mission leader in Sirena. So when the news reaches him, he sees this as an opportunity to just show the people of Gikuyu how barbaric these some of these initiation rites were. Yeah, and amidst all this that's happening, Joshua and his friend Joshua creates an evangelism group. I think I'm going to call it an evangelism group, and he's the leader, and he's preaching against female circumcision. He is preaching against several rituals that happen in the land that he's not comfortable with. He's saying so many things, and his group becomes so strong. So in Makuyu, he is the leader of the Christians in Makuyu. And in Kameno, Chenge is now sick and he's old. Okay, Chenge is an old man and he now becomes sick. He's got a stomach upset. He's got a stomach upset. And then most of the elders, because initially, just as we had looked at the last time we looked at this book, Waiyaki was one who is supposed to take after his father's position, since he was the only male child Chenge had. So Waiyaki was supposed to be the new herbalist. Yeah, but then the elders as well as Chenge, they're all worried that maybe Waiyaki might not be able to take up that responsibility because he's been exposed to the white man's tradition. And Chenge is now also worried about Waiyaki's involvement in the Mtoni case. So as we can see, there's a new conflict. This is an already existing conflict, but after Mtoni's death, it now becomes a bit kafafwa for both sides. Both sides of the community, both sides are blaming each other for what has happened to Mtoni. Others seem to have been enlightened. The Christians who are led by the missionaries seem to have been enlightened by Mtoni's death, while as the people in Kameno are blaming the Christians also for Mtoni's death because they believe the reason as to why Mtoni could not get healed was because Murungu was upset with Joshua. And Joshua has no reaction whatsoever. He doesn't seem to care that his daughter died. He feels he lost his daughter the time that she decided to go for circumcision. That's what's happening to this point we're at. So see you next time.